Isn't it amazing, friends, how each year, how quickly towards the end of August, the evening sun gets less and less. And we're amazed every year as if it's the first time happening for us, which I think is class. I mean, September obviously is very much the month, folks, where autumn really begins to take hold. And as the evenings get darker, I think we often find ourselves sitting down a lot more. I suppose being more reflective because we're not outside pottering around doing this, that, and the other as we usually would during the bright summer evenings. And I think it's also time, folks, we start reflecting a little bit more on ourselves and our lives, and we ponder our loved ones who have passed away, etc., etc. And you see, September, folks, is also a time where there's attention is paid to Our Lady and a particular devotion called Our Lady of Sorrows. It's a devotion that perhaps it hasn't had as much attention here as it has in other countries, maybe. It's a feast day where we focus on Our Lady's intense suffering and grief during the crucifixion of her son Jesus. I mean, Saint Bernard once wrote, "Truly, O Blessed Mother, a sword has pierced your heart. He died in body through a love greater than anyone had known. She died in the spirit through a love unlike other since his." It's extraordinarily deep. It's a moment, folks, where Our Lady suffered while Christ is being crucified internally. And of course, given great credence to the prophecy of Saint Simeon as she held him as a little baby that day in the temple, where he promised her and prophesied that her heart would be pierced. That's why, folks, you've probably seen images or statues of Our Lady where she's in floods of tears and her heart is exposed, and there's these 7 swords piercing her heart, representing the 7 wounds of her heart throughout Jesus' lifetime. That's what Our Lady of Sorrows is about. It's important, everyone, because a lot of people suffer. A lot of people go through very serious bouts of difficulty, and through no fault of their own, obviously, for many. And I think this can be seen, friends, very much on the face of mothers, more so than fathers. I think men suffer in a very different way, but women seem to take on, when their loved ones are under suffering, their faces take on the battering itself nearly. It's probably one of the most common issues that I come across when women come to me for a chat or for spiritual advice, whatever. I'm sure the same for Father Colin. To hear the pain in the mother's heart is quite something, and then to see the anguish on their faces as well. It's when their children have either gone astray or they're facing serious illness. Mothers who had to see their children die, or indeed have to help their children endure a great and terrible injustice done to them that has all but destroyed their child's life. Life can be extraordinarily unbearable at times. That's why, friends, when we enter the darker months, it's a time when light, artificial or natural, is all the more important, right? And by God, are we ever in need of divine light at the moment? Goodness me, there's so much negativity being thrown at us left, right, and centre. And I think, friends, Our Lady, particularly Our Lady of Sorrows, can be extraordinary help and instrumental in this. And we have to remember, friends, who we're talking about when we're talking about Our Lady. We're talking about a mother who endured a tremendous anguish of her heart, seeing her son being crucified like that and brutalized in such a terrible fashion. And she's also a woman who stood at the foot of the cross and did not run away, no matter what horrifying things she was looking at. Why? Because she knew that the suffering in this world, it cannot be compared, even slightly, it cannot be compared with the promise of life to come. She stuck close to her faith in God and in her son Jesus, so that no matter how hard and torturous it was for her, she knew deep down, suffering and death, it was not the end. The great John Paul II obviously has had devotion to Our Lady that was incomparable to many others. And he once said that Mary Most Holy goes on being the loving consoler of those touched by many physical and moral sorrows which afflict and torment humanity. She knows our sorrows and our pains because she too suffered from Bethlehem to Calvary. Mary is our spiritual mother, and the mother always understands her children and consoles them in times of trouble. Mary consoles us. above all, by pointing towards Christ crucified on the cross, and also points to paradise afterwards. He's so right. That's why, friends, I found myself more and more in recent Easters meditating in prayer on a certain event. Like what it must have been like for Mary to encounter Jesus after he rose from the dead. Can you imagine that moment of embrace? Just the sheer delight, which is too small a word, of what she must have had in her heart after the heart of sorrows. I mean, I think she who suffered above all others during the passion of her son, she now, in that moment of embracing Jesus, is just faced indescribable joy and happiness. My point, friends, today is for mothers and indeed fathers to embrace Mary, to really embrace Our Lady of Sorrows, especially in these very difficult days and the months ahead. Especially if your heart is full of anguish and sorrow about your children, what they face or indeed are facing. And friends, even if your heart is full of sorrow over the death of a child, trust faith in the Lord God, just as Mary did. No matter how horrible or how hard it got for her, ask for her divine help. She's here as the helper of Christians, and she's given that title for a reason. She knows how difficult life can get for us. And we desperately need divine hope and help at the moment, knowing that one day, by sticking with the Lord, your suffering, your hardship, with faith, it will be rewarded. That's the cross. So bear your cross, friends. Ask for her intercession, and let not your heart worry as much as possible, because she knows your trouble and your difficulty. Courage in faith, it will bring you suffering, but it will also lead to a joy and happiness that's indescribable, just as it did for Our Lady.